What makes a film timeless? To find the answer to that question, you need look no further than the 1985 classic, The Breakfast Club. This film defines that very word, and has maintained a reputation as one of the greatest coming-of-age movies of all time. I would go so far as to say that this is a film everyone needs to watch at least once during their teenage years. And I'm not even close to the only one who feels this way. The movie has been preserved in the Library of Congress due to being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. How has The Breakfast Club achieved this status, and how can a film that is so profoundly 80s be considered timeless? Let's find out. Written and directed by John Hughes, The Breakfast Club was made on a measly $1 million budget and shot in a single location. Now, usually the way I cover films is by moving from one plot point to another chronologically and spreading analysis throughout. However, that won't work here. Many people will claim this film doesn't have a plot, and while it's obviously an exaggeration, it is true that no major events really take place here, and that's kind of the point. The entire film takes place while the students are in detention. Nothing is supposed to happen. And yet these characters use this time to their advantage. They plainly speak about class and social hierarchy, and as Brian puts it, by the end of the film, they're no longer brainwashed. Of course, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself though. How did we get here? This opening scene is genuinely flawless. We're given the perfect amount of context for each character. Claire Standish is a spoiled rich kid. She's being dropped off in a BMW, and the first line she says is, "I can't believe you can't get me out of this." She's used to doing and getting away with whatever she wants because of her father's money and influence. She ditched school to go shopping and doesn't see anything wrong with that. The second character we're introduced to is Brian Johnson. He's socially awkward and clearly has a lot of pressure placed on him by his family. Next is Andrew Clark. And on an initial viewing, this scene seems relatively normal. So far, all we know about Andrew is that he's an athlete of some sort, he did something bad, and he got caught. But with some information we get later, it recontextualizes every word and facial expression in this scene. Fourth is Allison Reynolds. We don't get much on her aside from the fact that her parents seem to want nothing to do with her, with them pulling off without uttering a single word. And we get even less information from the final character, John Bender, who curiously walked to school and doesn't seem to care that he nearly got hit by a car. And even this lack of information is done exceptionally well. In order to make a character seem mysterious, you have to make the audience want to learn more about them. You have to make it clear that there's more to them than meets the eye. Due to the sequence of events here, we are made to anticipate a character introduction, but no such introduction is given for John Bender. That, combined with his nonchalant attitude, makes him appealing to the audience. We immediately become fascinated with this character.
Give me that screw.
I don't have it.
You want me to yank you out of that seat and shake it out of you?
I don't have it. Screws fall out all the time. The world's an imperfect place.
Bender's the definition of a flawed hero. Nothing happens in this film without Bender, and a lot of what he does is actually meant to help those around him. While he initially seems cruel, and at times he definitely can be, he also shows a lot of good qualities. For example, when he sacrifices himself so that no one else gets in trouble. This obviously is selfless, but this is also him taking responsibility for getting them into this situation in the first place. He also is a natural leader. The others are willing to follow him, and even though it was technically Andrew's decision that almost gets them caught in this scene, he covers for him. He brings everyone together and draws them out. As was mentioned at the outset, the characters are no longer brainwashed by the end of the film, and this is because of Bender. Before this story even begins, Bender rejects a class system and social hierarchy. Now, Bender is clearly too disorganized and unfocused to have planned out how he was going to draw these characters out and teach them his philosophy. But it's actually due to this rebellious nature that the characters become fascinated by him and are obligated to follow his lead. That being said, there are actual conversations where he does pick apart their philosophy head on, with the goal of teaching them something, either about the world or themselves. Now, an important aspect of each one of these characters is their home life and relationship with their parents. Bender is physically and emotionally abused in his home, both by his father and his mother. As is seen in his reenactment, his parents berate him and believe he's worthless. This would be bad enough, but Vernon adds on to it. He openly expresses how he believes Bender will never amount to anything. So no matter where Bender goes, the quality of his character is constantly under attack. And this ties into another important aspect of each character in this film: their response to societal pressure. Each one of them is being forced into a role due to societal pressure, and by the end, each one is made aware of this and aims to escape it. This is what was meant by them no longer being brainwashed. In Bender's case, this pressure is the weight of his perceived potential, or lack thereof. Bender can respond to this one of two ways. He can reject it and aim to accomplish a lot of things in order to prove people wrong, or he can feed into it and underachieve. He seems to be choosing the latter option, but as previously stated, Bender doesn't fit into a particular role. While he does have the whole bad boy criminal persona, he also expresses the aforementioned good qualities and genuinely is trying to help each one of these characters realize their own potential. Unfortunately for him, however, due to the perception of the adults around him, his own potential is being looked over. Of course, Bender isn't perfect. He does do some things that are objectively wrong, but it's important to remember he's just a kid. When confronted by Vernon, he responds as any kid would. He's scared and confused. While he may seem at times to have all the answers or a sarcastic response prepared, he has vulnerabilities. While Bender's character arc may seem non-existent in this story, I can't stress enough how important the events of this film are on him. At the start of the film, he's sarcastic and rebellious out of anger. He feels that he has no place where he belongs. He's rejected at home and at school. However, now he has a place where he's accepted and people who he can consider friends. While it's true we don't know what happened Monday morning, at the very least, Bender learned that there are people out there for him. We don't know what effect this will have on his future, but we know the potential he has.
Yeah, I can answer that right now, sir. That'd be no for me, because...
Sit down, Johnson.
Thank you, sir.
Bender was appealing to the audience due to his mysterious nature. On the exact opposite end of the spectrum is Brian Johnson. He's your typical nerd and academic overachiever. He struggles to talk to girls and is socially awkward. He's in a bunch of academic clubs and sucks up to his teachers. He's also a complete pushover. We think we know absolutely everything about Brian. It's almost comical how perfectly he fits into his archetype. However, just like everyone else, he has his own struggles with the pressure put on him. For him, this pressure is applied by his parents. In his character introduction, we see that his mom is strict and unreasonable. She demands that he finds a way to study, even in detention. This pressure is what motivates him to push himself as hard as he does academically. It's what forces him into his role. The thing about pressure, though, is that you can only take so much of it before you break. The reason Brian is in detention in the first place is because a teacher found a gun in his locker. After failing what was supposed to be an easy class, Brian was thinking of using it to end his life. This obviously comes as a shock to the audience. Brian seemed to be fairly one-dimensional. We thought we knew everything about him that we possibly could. But we, along with these characters, never could have guessed the internal battle he was fighting. Now, as he brings out, he eventually made the decision not to go through with it. But this mindset that he has nothing to live for beyond his own grades is obviously incredibly destructive. And this day in detention would prove to be essential for him. It shows him there's more to life. While he's initially quiet and yielding, by the end he's joking around and cutting loose with everyone. The film does bring out how, come Monday morning, everyone may end up disowning each other. However, the new perspective Brian's received is still incredibly important for his well-being. While the pressure placed upon him hasn't dissipated, it's been alleviated. He's even able to share a laugh at the other's bout of suicide attempt. This shows us how far removed from that he is now. It gives us hope for his future. He also proves to be a lesson to the audience to never assume you understand someone's struggles. They may have much more going on beneath the surface. They may not be as willing to share it as Brian is, but we should try to do what we can to help others with the pressure they face, not add on to it.
It's you and me. 2 hits. Me hitting you, you hitting the floor. Anytime you're ready, pal.
Andrew also receives pressure from his parents to fit into a certain archetype. However, it's in direct contrast to Brian. Andrew is pressured into cutting loose and messing around. When we're first introduced to Andrew, his dad mentions how it's normal for guys to screw around. He further goes on to say that the only thing Andrew did wrong was get caught. Initially, we interpret Andrew's dismissiveness to be due to him seeing nothing wrong with whatever he did. However, we later find out about what he did and how much he regrets it. Andrew had mercilessly bullied a kid in order to humiliate him. Now, Andrew for the most part seems like a nice enough guy. He spends most of the first act defending Claire and Brian from Bender. Later on, he shows a genuine interest in Allison and actually listens to her. He doesn't seem like the kind of person to physically harm someone for no reason. So why did he do this? As strange as it sounds, it's because of the pressure placed on him by his dad. His dad would tell stories of his time in school and the stuff he got into. Andrew got the sense that his dad was disappointed in him for not cutting loose as much as he did. So Andrew did what he thought his dad would want him to do. He began to pick on those that he viewed as weak. When explaining this, Andrew begins to cry. He regrets what he did and doesn't even know how to begin to apologize for it. The pressure Andrew faces forces him to become something opposite to his nature. Andrew goes so far as to say he hates his dad for forcing him to be like this. This line completely recontextualizes his character introduction. He isn't dismissive because he doesn't regret it. He's dismissive because his father is still justifying his actions. Actions that Andrew himself hates and regrets. This experience completely changed Andrew's view of his father. After forcing himself to be more like him, Andrew can't even begin to understand why someone would be so cruel to a person. In a sense, Andrew, Bender, and Brian all struggle from a similar pressure. The pressure of their perceived potential. Bender is perceived as being worthless. Because of this, he is a case of wasted potential. He is rebellious, angry, and hyperactive because he has all this energy and nowhere to direct it. Brian is perceived as being a genius. He is forced to maximize his potential, to be academically superior. He truly is a genius, though. His mind doesn't break under the pressure. Rather, his spirit does. His parents have made his academic perfection his entire world to him. He truly feels that is the only thing that truly matters. So when that can no longer be achieved, he temporarily feels that there is no reason to even go on. The others initially laugh when Brian brings up failing an assignment alongside Andrew's hatred of his father, but to Brian this truly is as pressing of an issue. And bringing it back to Andrew now, his perceived potential isn't academic, but rather athletic. In his own words, he has the strength and speed of a racehorse. He's a winner. But that fire, the intensity needed to succeed, doesn't come naturally to him. He is a gentle person no matter how hard he tries to put on the persona of a bully and a stereotypical jock. Just like Brian though, he truly is a natural athlete. His body doesn't give out under the pressure he's placed under, no matter how much he wishes it does. And on top of this pressure to be a winner, he also has the pressure to be cruel. His father even ties this cruelty into masculinity, claiming how it's natural for guys to behave like this. This is a pressure most children face, the perceived potential that is, especially in one's teenage years. If you have natural ability, whether academically or athletically, you are expected to make the most of it. And if you don't have these natural abilities, you're at best average and at worst worthless. The point the film was making is this: you cannot let others dictate your potential. The abilities you may have are your own, and you can choose how you want to use them. And if you believe yourself to not possess any natural talent, you have to take a step back and realize you might be capable of much more than you think. The pressure placed on you by society may always be there, but how you handle it is up to you.
Excuse me, sir. I think there's been a mistake. I know it's detention, but, I don't think I belong in here.
Claire is the quintessential popular girl. She's rich and has tons of friends. Bender makes a remark about how they'd probably shut down school if she didn't show up. This is a small detail, but she's so popular that when Bender asks her name, she seems genuinely confused for a second. Claire's life isn't as perfect as it seems, though. Her parents are allegedly on the verge of divorce, with Claire being caught in the middle. They're in a constant battle over her affection, and she views herself as nothing more than a pawn in the game where they try to one-up each other. Materially, she gets everything she could possibly want, but it's clear that she doesn't feel they actually care about her as an individual. Due to the lack of attention she receives at home, she seeks out this attention at school. She attempts to fit her role as perfectly as possible, a princess as Brian puts it. This requires her to be perfect all the time. We see this in her character introduction as well. She's worried about being labeled as defective for having to go to detention. This need to be perfect obviously puts a lot of pressure on her. It's an unrealistic standard. And although Bender was joking about school shutting down if she didn't show up, it goes to show the weight of the pressure she faces. She really is that popular. While she does brag about this at first, she is eventually brought to tears when talking about what has to happen Monday morning. Part of her role as a popular kid requires her to maintain a certain status quo. There are people she's not even allowed to talk to, and aside from Andrew, that includes everyone in this room. Now, we don't know exactly what happened Monday morning, but it can be assumed she got over this fear and escaped her role. Why do I say this? Well, whether her and Bender ever walk down the halls of the school together, we'll never know. However, near the end of the film, she gives Bender her earring and he begins wearing it. She isn't worried about anyone realizing that she gave it to him either. She isn't ashamed of their relationship.
You want to see what's in my bag?
No.
Allison is weird. That seems to be her entire personality when we're first introduced to her. Her role is simply being the weird kid, which has a pretty loose definition in itself. Because of this, she isn't confronted by Bender at all during the film. He doesn't have anything to teach her or help her with. In response to societal pressure, she doesn't force herself to be what people expect. That's not to say the pressure isn't there though. She simply responds to it differently. You could say that she uses this pressure to her advantage. People like Claire and Andrew have the expectation that they don't socialize with people like Allison, and Allison wants to be left alone anyway. Why is this the case though? Well, as is the case with each of these characters, her behavior is motivated by her home life. She's overlooked at home. In her own words, her parents ignore her. Claire faces a somewhat similar struggle. However, her response was to receive the attention that she didn't receive at home, in school. Allison, however, doesn't seek this attention and actively avoids it. Why? Well, it's because she's afraid. She doesn't open up to others out of fear of what they'll think of her. Like anyone else though, she does desire to have people she can trust. She does want to open up. And eventually she does so to Andrew. A line that stuck with me from my initial viewing of the film is in the scene where Claire gives Allison a makeover. She asks Claire why she's being so nice to her, to which Claire responds that she's being nice because Allison is allowing her to be. This no doubt serves as a powerful lesson to Allison. She can open up to others without fear of being judged. There are people out there that genuinely care for her. Of course, she never naturally came to this conclusion because of the lack of affection from her parents. However, she's gained people who she can trust and can consider friends. At its core, this is a film about societal pressure. We all are pressured to fit a role. We're often placed into a category by people and expected not to deviate from it. And this often begins in our teenage years. The film may be representative of the 80s in many aspects, but the themes presented here are timeless and relatable even to teens today. It's summed up best within the film itself. Vernon speaks to the janitor about how the kids seem to be getting worse with every passing generation, to which the janitor responds,
Come on, Vern, the kids haven't changed, you have.
"That is still the case today. Kids haven't changed. The struggles that come along with being a kid haven't changed. That's why even 40 years later, teens can learn from The Breakfast Club. They can learn to deal with the pressure placed on them by society, how to determine their own potential regardless of others' perceptions, learn to make friends that not only accept them for who they are, but also motivate them to consider new perspectives. We're taught as kids that we can be whatever we want to be. We initially interpret this as meaning we can be an astronaut, an athlete, or a politician, whatever else we want to be. It's a powerful moment though when we realize what this actually means. Being whatever you want to be means we can choose the type of person we want to be. It's not about occupation or class, although those factors can be influenced. It's about quality of character, the people we choose to have around us, and whether or not we pursue our latent potential. In my eyes, that's way more important, and it's the lesson this film is trying to impart to the viewer. Be who you want to be. You have the power to do that. Don't let the fear that comes with societal pressure hold you back. All you have to do to take the first step is expand your horizons and view the world beyond the bubble that's been created around you, beyond the role you've been given. Only then can you truly be what you want to be. That lesson will continue to be taught for generations to come. It is a timeless truth contained within a timeless film.